sign collapse at Atlas Liquors, right on that.
I know, I tweeted it right out too. Good evening, welcome to the August 28th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Selectmen. I'll begin by calling this meeting to order. We're going to begin by going into executive session. I'm going to propose a motion that we enter into executive session to investigate charges of criminal misconduct or to consider the filing of a complaint, believing that having such discussion in open session could have a detrimental effect on the board's strategy, and return to open session for the purpose of holding our meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Take a roll call vote. Ms. Connell?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells, yes. Mr. Farrington?
Yes.
Yes, we are in executive session and we'll return. We're gonna leave this room, so you can stay here. We're gonna go into the adjoining room on this side.
Should we shut our computers down?
Future meeting dates, Katie? I'm gonna talk briefly about the day. But follow up to your email from the other day about what day we meet on going forward.
Oh, the one I sent to,
Yeah.
I sent it to Emily. That had everybody's responses on it.
Okay, we're back in public session. I'm gonna go to item 3, review and approval of minutes. There are no minutes to approve. Item 4, confirming future meeting dates. We need to determine our fall schedule. There's an attachment, not preference. How far down is that? Is it on there, Emily, yeah?
Yeah, did I not link it? Alright.
I saw it. Everyone's email response is
Yeah.
saying, yeah, it was there,
I think I just didn't link it in the
Okay.
notes.
but I remember
Probably
reading it.
page like 20 or so.
There it is. No?
What does it say? Anywhere here? So, I know, I just made reference to Katie's, which was, right now we're on the first and
Second and fourth Monday.
Second and fourth.
second and fourth Monday. Do you want to stay on this or not stay on this? No.
I thought we picked Monday only for the summer. And then we
I know, so
figured
I
out
was,
schedule.
so there was some conflicts. Mike Zulus, yours is what, yours is,
Yeah, I mean, Monday's not the best night for me. It's a little bit of a challenge. Wednesdays work, Tuesdays work except for the second Tuesday. Mondays just aren't the best. I mean, I made it work this summer. If I need to keep making it work, I will. But for me, Mondays, if we're talking about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I don't think Thursday is a.
I think town council was against Thursday
Yeah,
because he
I-
thought there was just too short of the, especially
Yeah.
if you have to do something, you've only got Friday, which is only a half
Right.
day at town.
Right.
So how about
Board
this?
used to always meet on Thursdays, and we just changed it to Tuesdays a few years ago. But the reason it doesn't exist anymore was because we used to sign the payroll warrants.
Well, he was at our meeting when we talked about this, and you remember he commented, he goes, I would
No, I
recommend.
wasn't at the meeting.
All right, so he recommended we not use Thursdays, just because it gives you such a short window after the meeting on
Okay.
Thursday night. So how about this for a compromise, if we try this? How about the second Wednesday and the fourth Tuesday? Would that work? I think, would that accommodate? I know it's 2 days, but would that work?
I'm sorry, Richard, second Wednesday and
Second
fourth
Wednesday and the
Tuesday?
fourth Tuesday.
Very good for me.
I guess so. It
You wanna
just
think
seems
about
like
it?
it's easier to have have the same day of the week to.
Do you wanna do second and
for
fourth
people to plan.
Wednesday? Do you wanna do that? You wanna do the second and fourth Wednesday? I'll,
Sure.
Did Melinda have an issue with Wednesday, or I don't remember. I don't have the email.
Melinda
Is the
sent me
email?
an email. Let me just check.
all right, we'll come back to this one week. Do we have tentatively our
Actually,
next?
I have Melinda sent me an email. She said that she can meet the second and fourth Monday or Tuesday of the month from September forward, or any Monday or Tuesday from October forward.
No Wednesdays.
No Wednesdays.
All right, we'll come back to this. She's gonna be here later tonight, so I will. So in the meantime, do we have our next meeting is scheduled for?
It's not.
It's not. All right, let's go to our calendars.
The second Wednesday would be the 12th.
The 11th would be the second Tuesday.
Nine, 11.
Second Tuesday's not good for me.
All right, so let's go for the 12th. Let's tentatively say the next meeting will be Wednesday, the 12th, pending Melinda, and then we'll go from there. And then we'll try to go for second and fourth Wednesdays. Is that okay with you? And you?
Mhm.
Katie?
Great with me.
All right. Emily, I need your help here for a second. Okay. Item 5, citizen speak.
So it's just because the other files.
Oh, I
are
get you,
sent
okay.
over.
All right. Is anyone here for citizen speak? Seeing none, I'm gonna go right to item 6, which we're going to, we had a conference.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry, oh, Emily, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry.
So
The
I am
floor is
Emily Martin.
yours.
Thank you. Emily Martin, 4 Hope Avenue, Precinct 7 Town Meeting Member, and I am here with my annual announcement about the Dan Breen Memorial Red Shoe Run. It's coming up on Saturday, September 8th at 10 a.m. at Cunningham School. It's actually our 5th year, and we are on target to hit the $50,000 goal that the hospital sent for us for a like a vested an account for them to be able to do different trainings, like essentially. Sorry, I very poorly prepared for this one. Usually have a statement, but so Dan Breen was a transport aide at Milton Hospital. He passed away in a car accident in 2013. And he wanted to get into emergency management and disaster preparedness. So after he passed away, we did the run as a memorial, and also for the use of the funds, we decided to give it to the BID Milton Emergency Department for them to do continuing education, purchase any equipment that they may need that will kind of help them along in the process of, you know, helping in emergencies, disasters, and all that. So, and I think that there is a provision that if they're not using it, that it might be applicable, I think, to other departments in the hospital, but essentially it is focused on the emergency department. So it's our 5th year. We are very excited. There's an after party at a brewery in Canton of one of the firefighters. And yeah, so it's gonna be a good day. So I know that it's on RaceWire. And again, I apologize, I forgot my notes, but the
Is it on the town website yet? Is it up there?
no, but
No.
I can ask Rob.
we can post it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember you
And-
mentioned that. I thought we talked about that last year.
Yeah, and the banner's out in front of the town hall too, so.
Very good.
That's it.
Thank you very much. I know you're gonna be back in that seat again. I just don't know what the topic will be.
Give me a month and it's
Yeah.
Mike's 5K to crush you.
Okay, item 6 was a conference that we had scheduled with the president of Curry College, Ken Quigley, and due to a conflict, we had to postpone on that. I did have some communication with him today. I apologize. I hear you wanted to make, is there something you wanted to speak to tonight? No.
I mean, I think we're
You
gonna
wanna
give
wait,
it
you
a
wanna come
brief-
back? Okay, all right.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
come
up
back.
to you, we
Okay,
can do it.
no, that's fine.
Okay.
I just knew you did.
Yep.
So, I hope that we get him in at a later date. I think that, although he's a personal friend, he's a great partner for this community and a great colleague to have in so many ways, so. I'm gonna go right to item 7, which is the discussion approval of the appointment to fill the Board of Registrar's vacancy. This was perched an attached letter when C. Robert Reitz, who we appointed as the interim member of the Board of Assessors, he resigned from the Board of Registrars as he cannot hold both positions. With the upcoming state primary election on Tuesday, September 4th, a new member needs to be appointed. And I have a proposed motion here, if someone could read it, to appoint a resident of the town.
I move to appoint Gene M. Peterson of 8 Harold Street to the Board of Registrars.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in
So,
favor?
well,
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll just
Go
point
ahead.
out that
Go ahead.
the clerk has pointed out Ms. Peterson's qualifications and her involvement in the community, and she seems eminently qualified, and I think it seems like she'll be a very good addition.
Very good.
And it's great that she's willing to do it.
Anybody else? Anything else? Thank you, Gene. And hearing no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, it's unanimous. Robert Reitz was also appointed to MPEG today. He's busy.
He was appointed to what, too?
MPEG. He was there. I guess they have a citizen appointee. He was the citizen appointee. Next item 8, Mr. James Scroy. This is your we're here for your quality report. Our Director of Information Technology. In his 40, how many years with the town now? Way before my time. 40 exactly?
Wow.
Long time.
That other Richard Wells who hired you, he did the right thing when he picked you to come here. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. A couple of things I want to highlight here. One of the major accomplishments we were able to get done here was to upgrade the fiber optic service for the town. We had an issue several months back where we were having outages on a regular basis, internet, email, that sort of connectivity. So we upgraded that to a high-speed fiber optic line, which has proven flawless. We haven't had any downtime whatsoever with it. So that was a big plus. The second item that we accomplished here was the surveillance equipment that was installed at the town office building. That was in the works several months ago. Now it's all up and running. We have exterior cameras, interior cameras at Town Hall. All of the camera equipment at the police department has been upgraded. The interior, the exterior, and the cell block. That was one of the original camera projects back in the day with your father, that we put the cameras in the cell block and in the booking area. So that was original. So that was all upgraded several months ago. All going back to a server, having the data recorded and backed up. And in the early days, it was recorded on VHS tapes.
VHS, yeah.
Yeah. So that was a major accomplishment. And we have two big projects that we want to get underway. We were funded for transitioning to Microsoft Office 365, and we're just waiting for some to finalize some procurement on the product, the cloud-based product. So we'll be moving to that shortly, and that will be basically going to 365 as a product that's cloud-based. Everything remains basically the same on the desktops, except for the fact they're going right to Microsoft's cloud. So we don't have to maintain a server anymore for that, which is a plus on our end. Whenever you can push stuff off to the cloud, it's a benefit. And the major project that we're going to get involved in here is installation of new software at the fire department. We were fortunate enough to receive a grant from the state a few months ago, the Community Compact grant for roughly $46,000. So that will get underway shortly. That will be installing software, that will be installing hardware at all the firehouses, and tying into the existing police department records management system.
So it's part of PAMET?
It's part of
PAMET's fire server, correct?
Yeah. PAMET is the software that the police department has been running since 1993, and they have a fire software that goes hand in hand with it. So that's the software that we will be integrating, which basically the data comes into the police department's records CAD system, which is the computer dispatch, and then it will flow into the fire department system that they will then create their database from. So, and we will also be putting mobile data terminals in the fire trucks to afford them instant access to, pertinent information as they respond to any fires or medical emergencies. They'll have data at their fingertips. So those are some of the major programs that we have on our plate right now. And as always, we're just continually upgrading hardware throughout the different departments, computers, printers, and such. So that's basically it. If anyone has any questions or...
I have one, but I'll wait. You may follow up. So I attended my first MPEG meeting today, and obviously, as you know, sitting in the Comcast negotiation committee, there's a lot of discussion about the intranet, which is the main infrastructure that we run all of our in-house day-to-day data and technology, data and video over. So that high-speed fiber line you just referred to, is that part of the intranet?
That's our internet line. The iNet is the cables that
Right.
run between the buildings,
Right.
and that's what the RFP that just went out.
Right, I'm aware of that, right.
Yep, to get a company to come in and give us a study on what's the best system to put
Right.
into place. Right now, we have what they refer to as a star topology, where everything is home run back to the head end, which is at the Pierce Middle School.
Right.
So the design of choice right now is what they call a ring design, which basically overlaps. So if you lose connectivity on one end, it will
Right.
pick up on the other, so you would have no downtime, is the theory behind it. And hopefully the study will, bring that out, that's what we will put in place here, so.
Okay. That's all I got.
So just to follow up on that, so the fiber that we have, that's within the buildings, and what we're talking about with the iNet is really the cabling and putting fiber between the buildings.
Between the buildings,
Between the
correct.
buildings, so that's and up on the poles.
Right, the fiber that we have between the buildings that was installed about 20 years ago with Comcast put that in.
Right,
And then we've been utilizing it, I want to say for about 17, 18 years
right.
to connect the 18 locations.
And they own it.
They own,
They own it.
yeah, they
Yeah.
own that, and they chose to basically not support it anymore.
Right. I got that
So-
all today. I knew that from the previous meeting, but I got a lot more today. What is it today? So there's 6 strands. MPEG uses 2, and the town utilizes the other 4.
Right, each building has 6 strands of fiber. 2 are dedicated to data, 2 are dedicated to the TV portion, and 2 were there is what they refer to as dark fiber.
Right.
And the new system we put in, hopefully we'll have more strands that we can piggyback off of for, other things. The broadband, bringing it, out to maybe the neighborhoods. That's the goal of the committee that I'm on, the broadband monitoring committee, Joe Chamberlain and our group are pushing for that. So hopefully the design will afford that capability moving forward.
Okay.
In other words, start with the iNet, and
The
then,
iNet
and then
first.
to the extent that there's capital, move out from there.
Depending on how many strands of fiber,
Right.
we get. Obviously, we're not going to go with 6. We'll go with much more than that,
Right.
depending on cost.
Yep.
But from what I've been told, when you reach a certain point, it gets expensive. So I think it goes in increments of 12,
Oh.
like 12, 24, and so forth. So be interested to see what the folks come up with that are doing the study, and then putting a price together to figure out what it's going to cost us to do this. But we have to do it. It's there's no choice here.
Right. We're at the end of this. We have to do this, right?
Right.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else?
No, thanks.
Thank you, Jim.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, item 8, and this is a conference on an update on our pilot committee payment in lieu of taxes committee, and I will yield the floor to, you want to speak for it?
Sure.
Mr. Zulus,
Do you want me to go, Mike?
Sure, yeah, I can add a couple of comments there as well.
So this will be a brief update, not an extensive one. The brief update in terms of discussions that we've been having with the large nonprofits, Curry College has increased their pilot amount to $100,000 this year, which is a good and welcome increase. It's not the amount of the request, but it's certainly a significant increase, and they deserve a lot of credit. And I'm sure when President Quigley comes in, we'll have some discussion about how great an increase that was and how much that's going to help us. So we appreciate that, and we'll continue to work with Curry on that. I think the money's already in. I think they've already sent the check. We've had discussions over the summer with Beth Israel Deaconess Milton, and I hope that those discussions will continue. We've had discussions with Milton Academy, and Milton Academy has made a suggestion. Milton Academy's view is that they have property which is taxed, which they think if they sought a tax exemption, they would get that tax exemption, and that they don't do that, and they don't seek the tax exemption, and as a result they pay $117,000 in taxes that in their view they wouldn't have to pay if they sought the tax exemption. I think it's fair to say that our view is we're agnostic on that point. We don't know whether they would get the tax exemption or not, and so we haven't really considered that in terms of their tax payment. They have offered now a suggestion that they would go ahead and seek the tax exemption to see if they would get it, but they would continue to pay that $117,000 increased by the tax increase every year. If that would settle the view or settle the issue about whether they could actually get a tax exemption. So they've suggested that. The committee hasn't met because the committee is, I think it's fair to say, in flux right now. And so I think that what we need to do, and hopefully the next meeting we'll do it, is really reconstitute the committee, because Dave Burns was on the committee, Jim Henderson was on the committee, and so they'll need to be replaced. I was a citizen representative on the committee, and I'm not a citizen anymore. I mean, I'm not a citizen representative anymore. And also, with respect to me, I've been on the negotiating committee. It struck me that I was going to be negotiating with donors to the Milton Library Foundation. Now, I'm the president of the Milton Library Foundation this year, and so I was a little concerned that whether there be any appearance that I was negotiating with people who give to an organization that I'm involved in. I talked with town council. He doesn't think it's a conflict of interest per se. I agree with him, but out of an abundance of caution, I did file a disclosure of conflict of interest, noting that I'm the president of the Milton Library Foundation, and that I still, in my view, if individuals or entities give or don't give to the Milton Library Foundation, it's not going to have an effect on my judgment with the Board of Selectmen. But I wanted to make it clear that that's the case, that whether a donor gives or doesn't give to the Milton Library Foundation, that's not going to have an effect on my duties here. And so I filed the disclosure just to make that clear. And in addition, it strikes me that I probably shouldn't be on the negotiating team, just because I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that maybe if they give or they don't give, it could have an effect on my negotiating. So I think as we reconstitute the committee, maybe I'll be on the committee if we decide that, but I don't think I should be on the negotiating team for that reason. So that's kind of the update, at least from my view. Mike, you can supplement.
Sure, yeah, if I could just add, tremendous work was done by now Selectman Zulus, then resident Mike Zulus, and Matt Keswick as a part of the negotiating team. And I think an acknowledgement has to be made to Curry College for, I received a check on July 2nd, which was the first business day of the fiscal year. So they made a committed effort and I thank them for that. It's 16% more than we received the previous year. So there is the acknowledgement. They were the first of the big three, if you will, to acknowledge the letter in December when we sent it to them, and told us at that time, through their chief financial officer, Dave Rosati, that they were going to make a concerted effort to do that, and they did. To Mike's point about the committee being in flux, it is. I did get word from Chief Appraiser Bob Bushway today that Mr. Reitz is going to succeed Mr. Henderson as the Board of Assessors, and we're looking to put a meeting together. It hasn't been solidified yet, but we look to put that, to regroup, if you will, next Thursday in the Cronin Room, and just kind of introduce the new members to what the negotiating team and the previous committee had accomplished and what we're looking to do going forward as we proceed through the FY19 pilot payment and the documentation that was sent in December of last year. So.
Can I ask a question? I've never heard this part about the 117,000 before. Did you know that when you were negotiating?
It came up during the negotiations. Milton Academy's view is, again, that they have this taxed property that, in their view, they could achieve an exemption. They could, if they sought an exemption, they would get it. And they pay $117,000 in taxes on that property, and their view is if they sought an exemption, they wouldn't have to pay that. Again, we don't know whether that's true or whether it isn't true. And now their suggestion is, well, maybe we'll seek the exemption. We'll still pay, if we get an acknowledgement from the town that we're not doing it to try to skirt the payments, that we will continue to make the payments, but that at least that would take that issue off the table. So I think that's something to be considered by the pilot committee and then ultimately by this board, because it's been a suggestion that they've made.
When did they first bring that up, Mike?
Well, they brought it up during the negotiations. I don't know when they
Yeah.
first brought
But
it
like
up.
in the spring? There was a meeting that you had with Matt Keswick, I recall, like it was
Yeah,
like
no, I
June or
mean-
July. It wasn't that recent, was it?
No, they've mentioned it before.
Oh, okay.
They really, they hadn't made any proposal with respect to it. We, again, our view of it was different than theirs. Their view
Sure.
was that this is a payment. Our view was, well, this is not tax-exempt property. And
What
so,
properties were they specifically referring to?
I don't have that with me, Tony, but I
All right.
think these are adjacent houses.
Yeah,
I
okay.
believe these are
Correct.
adjacent houses. And so, again, their view is that they could get a tax exemption. Our view is, we don't know, so.
But even if they did, 0 plus 0 still equals 0. You're not getting anything more than where you're at today.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Their view is, well, but their view is that this is a payment that they wouldn't necessarily have to make, that this is a pilot, that this is actually a cash payment that they wouldn't otherwise have to make. And so, and they can make the case better than I can. But now they have made a suggestion that, hey, let's take that issue off the table, and we'll still make the payment, and we can still negotiate, and talk about these things, but maybe we'll just go ahead and find out whether we could get that exemption. So they've suggested that, and I think it's just something that the pilot committee and ultimately this board will have to consider.
Okay.
And Tony, to your point, they haven't made that suggestion to us until this month. This is the first time they've actually made that proposal, or I wouldn't say it's a proposal, I think it's fair to say it's a suggestion. The suggestion that they would go ahead and seek the tax exemption if we would acknowledge that they're doing it, even though they're still going to pay us.
Yeah, I would use a different word to describe that than suggestion. But
Well,
I would too. I don't know what word you're thinking, but I would too. It's still there. You know where, I mean, considering the steps that Curry took and considering all the work that the pilot committee's put in and the goal of what you're trying to achieve, it's still there. It's no different.
yeah, there's no added
No.
value there. That's right. I mean, there is no suggestion of any additional payments. I think it's fair to say their view is that they are already making payments to that degree. And, our view has been that these are payments that are required by law.
Mike, do you know or does anyone know how long a process like that takes?
The tax exemption?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think, I think it's a matter of months. I don't think it's to be a year. I think it's a matter of months.
I think it would be within a calendar year. I don't think it would be a long-term thing.
Yeah.
Like several weeks to a
They
few
do it all the
months.
time. I mean, these are things that they deal with, maybe not to that level, but these are the kind of things the Board of Assessors deals with.
Right.
But that suggestion, Mike, that was brought up as recently as your most recent meeting?
Yeah, this month. I mean, no,
Okay.
it was actually after that. They suggested, well, why don't we, if you agree that we're not trying to skirt anything here, that we're willing to keep paying that amount of money with the increase, and we'll go ahead and seek the exemption just to get an answer here. And so, I mean, you can imagine the pros and cons of
Sure.
that, and that's
No,
just
it's a
something we'll
thorny
have to
one.
think
I
about.
get it.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
it. It's just,
Yeah.
Chair, I think where you were going with that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is if that property, whatever the assessed value is that nets the $117,000 tax payment to the town were to come off the books, then their exempt value in the letter that we sent them in December would rise.
Right.
Therefore, we would ultimately be asking them for a larger share
I agree.
of, from what we previously asked for as it rolls off the tax roll, perhaps.
That's right.
Again, we had said to them, we're not tax experts, we're not giving you any advice what to do, but that's something they can file for.
And again, that's the first, I've never heard that mentioned ever in any of the discussions on pilot. I've never heard that mentioned before. And that's even like, I'd say that update's like the first big step that we would take, like anything at all, but just, I get it.
I think it's fair to say that, particularly in the last meeting, I think they're trying to work with us. I think
Okay.
they're trying to work with us.
you got that impression?
I think it's fair to say they're trying to work with us. They're making an effort. So,
Okay. We're good? Okay. Thank you. Item number 10, which is discussion of, update on our newly formed finance subcommittee.
So I'll just give a brief discussion, a brief update. Melinda Collins and I are the finance committee for the board, and we've met a couple of times this summer. I think we've met 3 times.
3
This
times.
summer. And we started off mainly working on our financial policies. That's going to take some time. Mr. Hurley's here tonight, and he came to one of our meetings with the town accountant, Amy Dexter, and the town administrator, so that we could talk about the capital policy. So there's about 15 in the existing policies. We've also recently received the investment policy from the town treasurer, so we're going to take a look at that. And Melinda in particular has been working on the financial policies. That's going to be, it'll probably be later this fall or winter
Okay.
before we're able to bring those to the board, unless we bring them incrementally. But we're going to take a strategy going forward of maybe discussing one at a meeting, and rather than
this-
focusing on those, because we're starting to come into the budget season.
You say there's 15?
15 in the 2008 set of
Okay,
financial policies. Yes, plus the investment policy that the treasurer gave us. So now that school is starting tomorrow, we're starting to get into the fall, we'll be starting to look at the FY20 budget. And at our last meeting, we talked about having maybe a preliminary discussion at our meeting this week, but we wanted to invite some input from the board. So if there's any priorities, whether it's public safety or some other area of the budget that members have particular issues or interests that they want to see addressed in the budget, notify the town administrator, and the finance committee can talk about that at our meetings. We do have a meeting this week, and then next Thursday, we also have reached out to the schools to see if we can get some of the school representatives to come in and meet with us. Not this week, because they'll be busy enough with school starting, but at the
Right.
next meeting, just to start a dialogue and start talking about what some of the priorities are, that sort of thing. And also, the town accountant asked me to let the rest of the members know that if anyone would like to sit down with her to go through the budget spreadsheet for the current year, fiscal 19, she'd be happy to do that. She did come to our last meeting. We spent some time going through revenue and expenditures and some different issues that came up in the 19 budget.
So I only have one question. My question is, are we comfortable that in FY 20, we're going to be only looking at a contingent budget?
We haven't even started talking about that, but yeah, I think that's our expectation right now.
That's
is
the
that
big, but that's
It's
kind
only
of
been a little over a year since we had an
I know,
operating
I know.
override, so
I just-
I don't think we're, well,
having
It's
lived through
early,
many
but
of these, I
that's
just have to ask
highly
that question, because
seems
that
highly
changes, I mean, that,
we haven't,
puts-
we didn't even talk about that really at
Okay.
the last meeting.
what do you think?
If not This year, probably next year,
Okay,
probably fiscal '21, if I was to
Okay.
guess.
all right. I hope not. I'd be thrilled if we don't, but I'm just, that's the,
That could be a headline.
Yeah.
I know. Okay, anything else? Anything else?
No, that's it, just really to update you, and just to invite any comments to the town administrator on budget priorities as we start going through the process.
Okay.
We'll have more to update as we get into the fall.
Okay, item 11, which is discussion on school space issue and process. I know I've had my own conversations with the chair of the school committee, Kevin Donahue, Dr. Donahue, and I know Mr. Zulus has had discussions as well, so I'll let you speak first if you want, and then I'll go to, it doesn't matter, I'll talk.
Yeah, I think you have more of
So-
substance than I do, Richard.
So, for everyone who's at home watching, the enrollment in our schools has swelled significantly to the point that they are they're going to have to look at additional space. They've identified the Cunningham Collycott, particularly the fourth floor, as one, because, well, let me digress a minute. So we have two alternatives. Do we find additional space, or do we look at building a new school? In my conversations with Dr. Donahue, I don't think either one of us were looking to find that kind of money to build another school. I think, and I've talked to Mr. Zulus, I've talked to the superintendent. I think the space that they're outlining, particularly in the Collycott Cunningham, I think could give them up to 10 classrooms, 10 new classrooms. And could possibly buy them from 8 to 10 years. That's if the enrollment keeps growing. Some in this room might not remember, but 15 years ago, Cunningham was closed for at least, I believe, 5 years because enrollment had dropped so much. So, they're talking numbers, they're at about they have money within their own budget to go out and do an architectural study to kind of give them what they can do. I think they're looking at about 1 million to maybe 1.2, 1.25 that they would need to fund this expansion if they were to do it within the existing infrastructure of their schools. The only other thing that I had suggested, and I don't know if I've mentioned it here, I've talked about it a little bit, with the fire station building committee, only because at least their chair, there's some talk about, perhaps in what they come out with in building a new headquarters at the site of this piece of property behind us. That's maybe one of their proposals. And the only thing that I've said is, this parcel of land behind us is one of the last town-owned parcels that could be used at all as far as being built upon. And that I think that if that even comes onto our agenda, our radar screen, that we need to be diverse enough that we should look at what else could we use it for. It was going to be, and one of the things that I've talked to the superintendent about and to Dr. Donahue just a little bit about is that I think one thing that could truly help our schools going forward would be if we were to build one central early childhood center for the pre-K and have them all go to one, and that would free up all that space in the elementary schools. And if the fire building committee does come to us with asking to use this piece of land as one of the potential sites for a new firehouse, that we as this board need to be visionary enough to look and say, okay, if someone's gonna touch this, what else could we do with it? We've talked, you and Michael and I have talked about, long-term, if you were to one day build an intergenerational center, perhaps you just close this part of Walnut Street and connect, add on to this and connect it, go right across. So, I just think that we need to be visionary enough to look at this in a bigger picture. But it's clear that the schools are going to be coming this year with a project that's probably going to be between $1 and $1.5 million. Go ahead. You
So
can add
then,
to that whatever you want.
then the question I think is really the process and whether we kind of formalize that and have a member or members of this committee working with a group on the school committee, whether it's a facilities committee or some other subcommittee, whether we have kind of a working committee with them. I think that's been suggested by some of them.
And I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
So that's really my question, whether we kind of formalize that so we make sure the communication works well between the two boards.
Why don't, can we invite Dr. Donahue to come into our next meeting? You all right with that? I'll do that.
I think it's great.
I think he'd come in anyway. So why don't we do that for the 12th? And start that right then and there, because this is, as Katie said, this is gonna be, we're in fall. We're gonna be in this before we know it. We good on that for now? And this to be continued? Okay. Item number 12. I knew Mr. Toma would arrive here tonight. I was actually watching the door. This is a discussion approval, a line bike statement of work. And we do have a motion before us. Do you want to speak to this first, Mr. Denny?
No, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I do want to thank Mr. Toma for engaging with Mr. Mullen from Line Bike. We are still in a holding pattern. With Line Bike, we did have an email from Mr. Toma that he was in communications with Mr. Mullen, and in addition to still having to work through some of the comments from town council, which ultimately comes down to liability issues for the town, is the fact that they are deploying, obviously they picked up the pieces from OFO and Quincy, and they're deploying bikes in other communities in Greater Boston as a part of the MAPC MOU, so they're very busy where they are currently.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
see them.
Yeah, so I think it's for this board, whether we continue to put them on the agenda every 2 weeks, or if it's something that we push towards April. Obviously, Mr. Toma's email to each of us is
got
the
that today,
former,
right.
to keep trying to work through this with Mr. Mullen and Line Biking and get some bikes on the ground this fall.
So is it town council who's still working with, or is it you, or is it who's?
So Bill Clark and Lauren Mazur
Okay,
from the
all right,
planning
okay.
department have been working with Mr. Mullen, but we've yet to resolve the legal issues that town council has presented to Line Bike, so.
Okay. I'm comfortable. I mean, I noted Mr. Toma's email today. I'm comfortable with it. I noticed that they've got them all along the Beale Street corridor. They're right on that, they're as close to the Milton line on every pole as you can place them. Okay, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think out of respect for Mr. Toma and the work that he has provided for this board and for the town in all of his capacities, that we continue to try to work through this before the snow falls.
I agree.
I didn't see Lee's email. I don't know if everyone got it.
Yeah, I got it today. I saw
Can you
it
forward
today.
it, just so we have it? Thank you.
You okay with that, Lee? Okay. Okay, item 13, the approval of a one-day liquor license for Forbes House Museum. We have a motion before us. If I could have someone make this motion.
I'll move to approve a one-day liquor license for the Forbes House Museum at 215 Adams Street for its Barn Fest event to be held on Thursday, September 27th, 2018, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Item 14, the approval of the October 2008 special town meeting greeting and index pages. We have a motion here before us.
I'll move that we approve and sign the October 2018 special town meeting warrant index and greeting pages.
Seconded.
Any discussion?
Can I make one suggestion?
Sure. Go
On items 16 and 17, and maybe this is what it needs to be, but it says amend general bylaws in both of them to adopt gender-neutral language of select board. It suggests that that's the only thing. So I would either just cut out of select board and just leave it gender-neutral language, or say including select board. It seemed a little, didn't really.
Yeah, you mean now that we've added chairman into it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so it seemed a little.
It makes sense to me to delete up select board. And just leave it, adopt gender-neutral language.
So I guess I'll offer that as a friendly amendment.
I'm fine with it.
I'll take it.
Tony?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
I think we also need to schedule well, we need to talk with the chair of the warrant committee, but the last several years, we've gotten out of the habit of having the warrant committee chair come in and present the warrant. That's what we used to always do when Tom Hurley and I were warrant committee chairs. We had to come in and actually kind of go through with the selectmen what the warrant articles, what the recommendations are, and that hasn't really been happening.
So I think that's a
And we
great
should- and we
idea.
should do that. Even though the warrant committee's now on television, so people see their deliberations, not everybody watches. It depends on what time of day that they air, so it's just another opportunity to have a little more information to residents who are watching,
So
to
I'm-
hear about the articles.
I'm going to even go a little bit further on that to say that I would like the warrant committee chair to understand that on any articles that come under the purview of this board, that are considered Board of Selectmen articles, that they not discuss them unless the town administrator is there. Especially in the fact of bringing other department heads, things of that nature. I would like him to go through the town administrator for that. And I actually emailed him on that the other day.
And unless the board is there too, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Because we really should be there to speak to the articles.
Yes. Even though I didn't want to go last year and you made me, and I'm glad I did go. So let's schedule the chair for the 12th. You all right with that?
I
I'd
don't know
rather
if
do
that's
it
too early.
sooner
I'm not
versus
sure
later.
what the date is that it's going to the printer, but, because I think I know the planning board's having their hearing on the 13th. That meeting might be too
So then
soon.
we'll
It
go
might
for the
have to be
meeting,
the next
so we'll
meeting.
go to the next
Yeah.
meeting after that. I think it's the 26th or 27th, I already looked, I think it's, is that okay? That meet?
Mhm.
Okay.
So I think we have a motion made and
Yeah, so
seconded.
that's what I was gonna ask. So we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Item number 15, while we're moving.
Yeah, we're cranking right along.
We have a conference with a full member of the board, Mr. J. Thomas Hurley, regarding an act authorizing the town of Milton to establish a special purpose stabilization fund, and Tom, I invite you to come to the table. Floor is yours.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to let you know, I'm going to see how this discussion goes. I may have to be recused on this. I'm not sure how much level of detail we're going to get into about, say, the fire project, the building project, or potential DPW building project, but the fire one, since we have a building committee in existence, if we get into a lot of detail, I might
Yeah,
recuse myself and leave the room, so I just wanted to mention
get
that at
that.
the beginning.
Okay.
But if it's
So
general, I
noted.
think I
Okay.
don't think I
yeah,
have a
I mean,
recusal
it's,
issue.
again, it depends how much detail you want to get into. Yeah, I did bring my model, so that'll go up on the screen. Hopefully.
Have you,
And
have
go
you
ahead.
had any conversations recently with Brian Walsh?
not recently.
Okay.
I've gone over the model with the fire building committee, so they're aware of what it is.
Oh, yeah. And I,
So, let me explain what it is in a nutshell. 2 years ago, when I was on, when I was a member of the Board of Selectmen, and I was also on the Capital Committee, just kind of thinking out of the box, you know, we knew we had these two big capital projects in front of us, fire stations and a DPW facility. Obvious that there was no way that they were gonna fit under the levy limit and get paid for. You know, you wouldn't do another capital project
Right.
for the next 20 years if you did that. So how can we do it and make it not too onerous for the taxpayers and still have it be, in essence, a debt exclusion kind of item? So what I came up with is, we were looking, right now, we're still paying off schools and the library as a debt exclusion. So, in essence, an override. The citizens of the town of Milton are paying, in FY 2019, they'll be paying about $2.3 million in additional debt service that they'll be taxed for over and above Prop 2.5. So my idea is, what if we ask the voters to say, okay, well, first of all, every year, because we have what's called level principal debt service, so every year, the total principal and interest decreases on any debt issuance. So what if we were to ask the voters, let us keep that $2.3 million level, the debt service that gets paid will be something less than that, and let us bank in a special purpose stabilization fund the difference. As that fund builds up, when it builds up sufficiently, we'll issue debt for either the fire stations or the DPW, or a combination of both. And we will promise to the voters that they will never be charged more in their real estate tax bill than the amount that they're paying right now for that debt exclusion number. And we'll use what's in the stabilization fund to, in essence, stabilize the debt service payment to keep it at that $2.3 million number. So working with town council, working with bond council, we did kind of put a home rule petition together 2 years ago that basically said that. Basically, there's some limits on it, just to make sure that it doesn't get carried away. We can basically use this model to finance up to $50 million of debt. That's the cap on it, and that was kind of put on there by town meeting when we went through this 2 years ago.
And it can only be these two projects.
Can only be these two projects,
Right, the
can't
fire
be anything
stations
else.
or the DPW.
That's it, or both. There's a limit to how big the stabilization fund can grow. It can't grow to more than 2.5% of the then operating budget, to make sure that it just doesn't keep growing unwieldy, that we just don't do anything and just keep building up this stabilization fund.
The total operating budget, our schools, everything.
Yeah.
Total,
Yeah, 2.5% of that. So it's approximately right now, $2.5 million, give or take. So, I started playing around to put a model together. The model's up there. But basically, the first column is the year, but the second column is the current debt service, the 2.3 million. The third column is, again, this is just trial and error, playing with debt issuances out in various years. And then, again, where the total debt service is less than the $2.3 million, money will go into the stabilization fund to, again, keep the charge to the taxpayers at that $2.3 million. So in 2020, for example, the debt service, there's no new debt issued, it'd be 2.25. So it'd be about 77 grand left over. 77 grand goes in, and then there's an assumption of 1% interest growth, and then the stabilization will grow. Then out here are new debt issues, and again, these are kind of linked into bond schedules. I'm assuming 4%. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if that's good number, bad number, but based upon today, I think it's in the ballpark, because we're looking at 30-year debt. So the interest rate on 30-year debt would be higher than it would be on 5-year debt, for example, just because of volatility and everything. So I think 4% is probably sufficient. We'd need some expert help to kind of refine that a little bit. So again, as this builds up, I'm proposing issuing $10 million of debt in 2023. And you kind of keep your eye on this column right here. This is the cumulative balance. So you can see it starts, you issue $10 million of debt here, and all of a sudden in these 2 years, you're going to take money out of that stabilization fund to keep at the 2.3 million. You can see over here, the total debt service, including the new debt, is above the 2.3. And then because it's level principal debt, it starts decreasing. The total debt service payment starts decreasing. Now you start getting back down below the 2.3 million again. You're able to put money back into the fund. So it just kind of revolves around that way, and you just kind of keep your eye on this just to make sure that you don't go negative. So, in this model, and you can play with smaller amounts up here and maybe bigger amounts down there, but this one I just threw together, another $10 million in 2026, another $10 million in 2029, 2032, another 10, and by 2036, you've got $45 million worth of debt issued, and you haven't exceeded the 2.3 million to the taxpayers, and you've still got money in the stabilization fund. And at that point, if that built everything for you, you can see then that this starts winding down. You know, you're just not going to need the money anymore, so you just kind of you keep what you need, you refund the rest back. You don't charge them the full 2.3, so that the stabilization fund eventually goes away. So that's kind of the basis of it. Nothing really extraordinary, but you know, again, we need somebody to refine the assumptions better. It is an override, you know.
Right, I knew that
so
part of it, and it's gonna require a vote.
Yeah, it will require a vote, because we're asking the taxpayers to basically let us keep some of their debt exclusion money, where it otherwise would have been refunded, or the tax bills would have gone down. So, I mean, the key here is, you know, so you don't have a roller coaster effect to the debt exclusion, you know, that every time you put one of these things on, their tax bill goes up, and then it goes down for a while, and then it goes back up again. So this way, it's, at least from the debt exclusion standpoint, I mean, the tax bill may still go up because Prop 2.5 increases year after year, but it wouldn't go up because of this project. It'll just take longer to get down to zero. You know, no matter how you slice it, you're still paying $45 million in additional money, plus interest.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard two versions. Do we think this requires a town meeting vote or a referendum vote?
I think town meeting has already voted it.
Already approved this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you're probably gonna need a town meeting vote when you have a capital project.
Right.
Because right now, we don't, there is no capital project in
Right.
front of, all town meeting has allowed us to do at this point is build up a stabilization fund. So before we can issue debt, we're gonna need town meeting approval.
Using this formula, you think 2022 would be the first year we could?
You could potentially do it a little bit if you wanted to go in a smaller debt amount to begin with. I understand there is a possibility, and I don't know much about it or even who it's coming from, but there is a possibility of some grant or donation money for
Right. I've heard that
central.
as well. Right. That can change the exact rate.
Yeah, I mean, if that does materialize, you know, maybe you do central first, and then allow this to build up a little bit.
Well, that would definitely help if you use this formula.
Right, otherwise, you're
Right.
gonna be waiting a few years down the road before you can break ground.
So I'm gonna give you this, so this is hypothetically, I think, what they're thinking now is, I think the first thing they wanna come to town meeting for is 2 million for design, all the design work, for all three of them. Now, if it was just one of them, that could be lessened, that this, I'm just going from just general things they've said to me when
Yep.
I've been there. I know that 2 million is gonna be about the first number they're going to
Right.
come looking for, to town meeting.
And keep in mind, you know, if that's 2020 or 2000, you know,
Yeah, that would be for,
you can ban it for a couple of years,
right,
and the interest rate on bans is right now, at least, is very low. You're not paying, I think if you went 2 years on a ban, you'd have to pay principal down in one of those years, but you know, that would get you up close to that 2023 point where you might be able to start issuing debt.
but would you agree with me? Because one of the things that I, just doing my own little research, like, so take that 77,000 this year and 20?
Yep.
If we don't do anything, that's gone, we don't get it.
That goes back to the tax.
Back to the tax base, it's gone.
Yeah,
So
Yep.
until we take some type of action, we cannot bank a dollar
that's right.
Correct.
for
That's
either
right.
of these projects. And if we waited to 2023, you lost 20, 21, and
That's right. Yeah, you
22,
would.
correct? You'd lose
Yep.
that money's gone, you can't get it.
Yes, about 500,000
Right.
approximately.
So that aspect of this proposal alone, I think, puts a little bit of urgency as far as we need to take some type of, or come up with a plan, how to move forward with this, because this is money that is going to go into the bank in 20,
Mhm.
that if we don't take some type of action on it, we're gonna lose that.
Right. Clearly, the difficult thing here is to explain it to people.
Yes.
People's eyes tend to glaze over. If I was to throw that up and show it to people, they'd all run.
Right.
I'm sure.
But I get it in that, because if you weren't here for either the library or the school, debt exclusion overrides, to understand it, and if you moved here afterwards, you've been paying it, you just don't realize that's what you're paying. But as the taxpayers are paying it down, my understanding of this, from the time you first proposed the concept of it, is this is a way to keep every taxpayer where they are today in 2018 and still make two huge capital projects
Right.
happen in this community
Right.
without any additional burden.
Exactly.
Without an additional, the override, well, I say both had overrides. There was I believe two overrides for the library, one failed, the second one passed. And we had a major override, that may have been two override, well, the number changed several times on the school override. I don't know if we voted more than once, but the number changed more than once.
Right, right.
So I do think that, I appreciate you coming here explaining this, because I think you're 100% correct. This is going to take some explaining. We're gonna have to make people understand this, from everyone from the warrant committee to town meeting to the citizens, that,
The citizens, because they're the ones that have to vote.
yeah, the ones who are gonna have to vote. Yeah, the citizens are gonna have to understand why this is a way that they can dramatically enhance the infrastructure of their community,
Right.
their public safety with fire stations, and the DPW, without paying any more money than they're currently paying today. Did I say that right? Hope so. Anybody out before that? Any comments?
I just have a question. So Tom,
Yeah.
so under this construct, the current construct, we're talking about a $10 million debt issuance in 2023, so we're not breaking ground on anything until 2023? Or you said we could maybe start with increments earlier on?
You could potentially start with smaller
potentially
increments
ban small
and do it
increments.
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to play with the numbers. But you can see that right here, based upon my projection, that fund balance goes down to 60 grand in 2025.
Right,
And then it starts building back up again.
right.
So, that's where you got, and this is all estimates, so I
Right.
mean, you clearly don't want it to go negative. If
Right.
it does, you're coming out of the general fund with, you're coming out of the, because you're promising not more than 2.3 to the.
Right.
Anyone else? Going back to your prior comment, just understanding our capital budget, if you were to even try to think about funding this using general capital, you wouldn't buy another thing? You wouldn't be able to buy another thing for
No.
30 years?
No, because, you look at the size of that debt service,
Right.
and some of those, it gets up as much as $700,000 in
Mhm.
debt service in some of those years. So, yeah, if you tried it, some of those years, you wouldn't do anything else except, you couldn't.
So, let's say going back, I think maybe what I'd like to do, because the only one that I know that's definitely going to be coming is fire station building. There's two possibilities. One is they're definitely gonna be looking for money for building design, but I think that's for all three.
Yeah.
And then the caveat to that is that there's potentially a significant donor which would cut that 10 to
Yeah.
somewhere like 3 total, which would be a huge benefit to the community.
I think the education, too, has to be not only the model, but the need for the facilities themselves. I mean, the model's great, but if people don't believe that we really need new fire stations, or fully understand the condition that those fire stations are in and the DPW facility is in, and look at designs and see what we're proposing and where we're proposing it, and I think that's key to the whole education process for the voters.
I agree. So I think the fire's first in this. I mean, fire's way ahead of the DPW in this.
Yeah.
I think maybe I'll reach out to Brian tomorrow, maybe bring him in on the 12th and start to kind of at least get his ducks in a row. And then, do you think that you are right? I mean, it is an override. In every override that I've been around in this community, there's been an educational effort, a significant educational
Yes,
effort.
yep.
This is probably something that we need to do sooner versus later, whether we do it neighborhood by neighborhood, town meeting, precinct by precinct, neighborhood group by neighborhood group. I think that we need to fly the flag of this.
Right, right.
Simple as that.
And you don't realize how big a town this actually is until you start trying to
Exactly right.
get people
Get the
together
message
and-
out, yeah.
Yeah.
Get the
yeah.
message out. And, I'm sure the fire department, the chief, and because they live in these conditions, they're working in these conditions tonight as we speak. But we're gonna need more than them to do that. I think it's gonna take all of us collectively to do this. It is a very unique approach because, as you say, while it is an override, it is an approach that we can take where if the average person can just sit and learn it and understand it, they have a great deal to gain from it.
Yeah.
Comment? No, you're good. You good? Go ahead.
Forgive me if you said this in the beginning, but what's the timeline then? Are we looking to have this for the spring?
What's the timeline in terms of,
Of getting the override?
it can be put on any.
Any ballot.
Yeah, it's
Any
been
ballot.
approved, so, by the state and
Right,
signed by the
right,
governor.
right.
So it's set to go.
Okay.
It's just a matter of when the
When we
selectmen
feel
decide to
we've-
put it on a ballot.
Right, right. So timing the education portion to that
Right,
and that.
exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
And getting a, kind of a committee together, whether it be the fire building committee and other people, but, similar to our operating overrides, where you just kind of get a coalition together and, reach
Fire.
out.
You gotta
Right.
go out and do it.
Right,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
you didn't have something personally in mind?
I did not have something personally,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
I do only in that I know that the fire station building committee is coming. They're looking
They're
to be,
ready, yeah.
they're ready to start.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the first chance or the next opportunity is April 19.
Yes,
And so if it's gonna, so the next step, if we're talking about April 19, would be to, after the next town meeting, it would be to have this on the warrant starting in January, right?
mm-hmm, yes.
So that's kind of, I think that's probably the
Thank you, that's what
timeline.
I was
Yeah.
asking, yeah.
Yeah,
get-
I guess it doesn't have to go before town meeting again, but
Right.
it would have to.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
So,
But
but it would have to
wouldn't-
be ready.
If, to Melinda's point, if, let's say fire station buddy comes to us next month, say, we'd like to come to town meeting and ask for 2.5 million for design, for building design in our January special town meeting, wouldn't they have to go back to town? Or do you think we could just
That
go
would.
right, or do you think we
Yeah.
could go right to the general election with this?
No, the only thing that's going to the general would be
This.
to allow a stabilization fund to
Right.
be funded.
Okay.
We already had the permission to set up a stabilization fund, but not put any taxpayer money into
Yes.
it. We could fund it with grants and gifts and whatnot, but not taxpayer money.
I would rather have them, I don't know how anyone else feels, I would rather have them come with their proposal to town meeting earlier than put it off till next April and then go to a vote or a referendum at the same time, the same month. I think that if we can get them to us January, February, whenever we have a special town meeting this winter, get it identified, passed by town meeting, and then have that window to work on it from then till April
Mhm.
to pass it, I think is
Yeah,
our best, is
yeah.
probably the best road we could follow right now.
Right.
With
But you're
the-
right. The 2.5 million, you know, or whatever the planning and design is, would have to go before town meeting, because that would
I
be part of a
agree.
capital project.
Yeah.
Have to go through the capital committee and then to town meeting.
But highlighting the point that you highlighted, that 77,148 would be forfeited if it doesn't get on a referendum sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And each year you wait, you forfeit
Right, so,
the ability to put that 77, if you look at column H,
right, it all goes.
right?
Right.
Every
So
year
we
you
wanna do
wait, that
this
money
this
is no
year.
longer available.
Back in 2018, that 2.3 was 2.6. It's gone down dramatically because of a couple of refundings
Right.
that have been done.
Which means that chart, according to that chart, FY '20 starts, next July.
Next
So
July
we'd have,
1st, right.
so we, in order to meet that, we'd
Yep.
have to get the referendum next April.
Right, right. You got it.
Hope we got this on tape.
Well, I've been witness to Tom explaining this.
Oh, I've been-
We were at the Senate the day they passed it as a home rule petition, and you could see it wash over the senators, and then when Tom explained what it actually meant, they all understood, and, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the other surrounding communities tried to do something similar, because the numbers are there.
To be honest with you, if I were the governor, I would say to him, I would try to make this a statute that any community could. So you wouldn't have to go for it as a home rule petition, that any community could use it. Because especially in today's day and age, the pressure that's on each and every community, it's a way to dramatically enhance your services and your infrastructure without a massive campaign, while keeping tax dollars at the same level that they're at today.
And in several discussions with Mass DOR, where Tom convinced them that, this,
This is the way to go.
yeah.
Yeah, DOR they weren't crazy about it. They felt it was, in essence, an end around Prop 2.5.
Right.
We said to them, the voters can decide they want it or they don't. I mean, it's, so it's, we're not trying to go around Prop 2.5.
Well, probably never thought, Tom, when he came on this board, that there would be a Hurley amendment, but there is.
Infamous.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Thank you very much for this.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. We all appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
Not a problem.
I'm sure we'll be just talking further. Item 16, begin by welcoming Mr. Denny back to the country. And,
Oh, town
Town
administrator's
administrator's report. We're there. We're there, and it's only 10
My computer's
past
on the
9.
fritz, so, first and foremost, as we talk about referendums, just want to remind everyone, a week from today is the state primary. Get out and vote. Also happens to be the first day of kindergarten. Most of Milton schools are going back tomorrow, but kindergarten starts next Tuesday, so expect heavy turnout at the schools with young minds starting their first day in the Milton Public School System, but also remember to exercise your democratic opportunity. I just want to thank all the summer programs that took place in town. The Parks Commissioners sponsored the summer concert series, and all the people that sponsored the groups that sang out on the town green. Parks Commissioners, Dave Perdios, Paul Demano, Bonnie DeVore, all the people behind the curtain. Parks and Recreation, huge success. All the kids you saw down in and around Cunningham all summer are getting on buses and going on field trips. Milton Summer Enrichment, all the people at the school department that helped put that on, that's a huge success in July. Really gives the kids something to do in our town. So just want to thank all of them. Another successful summer season with Milton Summer Enrichment and all the Parks and Recreation programs that went on. Recycle carts, before the next time this board meets, if we're going to meet on September 12th, that will have started. Hillary Waite confirmed today that September 10th, the carts will start being delivered to the residences in town. If you have any questions, you can call Public Works at 617-898-4900. There are some frequently asked questions online if you jump on the town's website and go through the Public Works Department. But the turnaround time for the entire rollout is about 2 weeks. And quite confident with the group. Cascade Carts, worked with them in Boston, very successful group. They know what they're doing. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to divert some more of the trash from the solid waste stream and make it a little easier for people to increase their capacity for recycling materials, which is a lot cheaper for our tax dollars. And lastly, happy with what I saw this morning down at 131 Elliott, and got confirmation today that the construction company, demolition construction company, has met with the T, and it looks like sometime Saturday morning the diversion will start. So they will be running on bus routes at that time, and the main piece of that building will start coming down this Saturday coming. So one more coordinated meeting between all departments. The police, I will advise people to try to stay away from the Central Ave area. We'll be in one lane only during the diversion, with police details there to make sure everyone can get through safely and the pedestrians can get to the bus stop during the diversion period. But I just want to thank everyone involved again for what I saw down there this morning. The 2 weeks that I wasn't in town, some great progress was made, and that should continue this weekend. So, and that's about it.
Mike, quick question on the diversion. I know there's a window, if I recall, from September 1 to a full week, Saturday to Saturday. Do you think that we'll need full use of that time?
So the T had advised the demo construction company to try to finish by Thursday so they could get service back up for the following weekend. And it's my understanding that they're confident it should not take until Thursday.
Okay.
So, we have Saturday, full day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So.
Right, we have it if we need it. I just was
Correct,
asking.
yes.
You know,
Yep.
I'm not going to hold you to it, of course,
Right,
but
right,
just
right.
trying to get a.
Yeah, we do have a
feel
couple
for it.
extra days, and obviously, with the diversion costs being paid by the town, we would love to maximize it.
Right, we have
that
an
effort.
incentive to get it, to
Correct.
incent Lorenzo to get it done, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Good?
I'm good.
You sure?
Thank you.
You sure?
Yeah, still on
Okay.
Irish time, but I'll be all right.
I hear you. If everyone would get their pens out, on the chair's report. So I have a couple of dates. I've had several discussions with Cheryl Tagayas, the chair of the planning board, relative to their movement on the proposal for Falcone in the square. So on 9/27, and you can, let me give out all the dates and then we'll come back to this. On 9/27, they're bringing in MAPC to do an in-depth discussion about 40R and whether or not they believe 40R would even be feasible for this area. On 10/11, one of the things that Cheryl and I had talked about, she and Bill Clark, I believe, and Lauren met with Chase Berkeley and Michael, and they retained Beta. Is it Beta Constru, is it? It's,
Beta Incorporated.
Beta Incorporated, which is a very big traffic analysis company in the Commonwealth. They do a lot of big projects, who are taking all of our projects, everything that is currently going on the square, which to include the deck project, Howard Stein Hudson reports, the, I guess a recent, it wasn't before us, but I guess it was a recent proposal was done by the marketplace where some changes were approved there in parking and their stuff. The proposal for the intersection at Granite and Bassett, they're taking the work that's being done currently, which has already started this week, if you haven't noticed, for the new intersection at Granite and Squantum, as well as our approved project for new signalization and lights at Adams and Squantum. And they're taking all those studies, and they're going to look at it all as it could relate, how it could relate to what is being proposed here by the Falcones. And then in 10/25, they're bringing in Ned Cochran and Falcone to update them on any possible next steps. So there are three things I want to ask here. One is, do we want to make any of these a joint meeting between them and us, at least for the purpose of just this discussion, maybe not all of it? Secondly is, maybe perhaps one or more of these dates, we might be able to, like, go to that with them and then do our own meeting on that night as well, just to not make members have to give so much time. And so, I'll ask our newest, we'll get to Jen in a minute, to maybe look at that, at the dates we're looking at here with their dates. And then, the only other thing that I've talked about with Cheryl, because she had initially thought she wanted to do this beforehand, and Mr. Zulus had asked me at the last meeting about the talks we had about a joint committee between us, the planning board, the East Milton Neighbors Association, maybe the chamber, and any other interested. I think she wants to at least get through this 9/27 thing before we start to put this together. I'm gonna kinda wait from her, but I wanna, if you could just email Jen this week if you are interested in being in it. I think 2 members from them, 2 members from us, someone from the chamber. I think it's gonna be Peter and Steve Rhines from East Milton Neighbors, maybe a couple others, whoever else they pick, and then whatever other interested parties, to at least work on this, and get some community input and dialogue. I wanna make sure that that's part, I think we all do wanna make sure that's an important part of this, so, that's just the one thing that I wanna give everyone an update on that. To Mrs. Collins, I know you weren't here, but would the second or fourth Wednesday work for you as far as meetings,
On
on regular meetings?
I think so, and I'm sure we could move the
All right, so-
Affordable Housing Trust if we had to.
So for now, we're gonna meet on the 12th, and then you
Okay.
can just
Great.
email Jen
Okay.
and
Second.
let her know. If that works, that's gonna work for all of
Yeah.
us, so we're all gonna be okay with that?
Second
Okay.
and fourth Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday, we're on Wednesdays, yeah.
I
Okay,
think so.
I think that's fine. Thank you.
and that's, and I just again, I did have communication today with President Quigley, and I just wanted to thank him again for everything. He's a great partner and a great friend to this community. And I do want to thank Bill Clark, that, as Mr. Dennehy heard from me, we had an issue last week while he was gone over at Milton Marketplace, and Bill Clark and Charlotte Gaius did yeoman's work on Friday trying to bring this to some resolution. I'm very grateful to both of them for all that they did. That's it.
I really don't have anything, save for the fact that the town administrator, I had a request from a citizen to make sure that we had the flags at half-staff for Senator McCain, and I alerted Mike, and he was right on it, and he was ahead of it, and he made it happen. So again, thanks to Mike, and thanks for the town for getting ahead on that.
We did find one, though, so thank you for the notification. The one at Kelly Field hadn't been
I
lowered.
saw
so
that, I saw that today.
Thanks to you, Selectman. I took a quick ride around, and we did find one, so.
Sometimes when it's not a local issue, actually, I think, I read something yesterday, people that anytime a member of Congress passes away, calls for a nationwide lowering of flag. So I read that last night, but I did see that today.
Thank you. Well, I can report that the Housing Committee is fully nominated and awaiting at our next meeting the appointments. So, thank you.
That it?
That's it.
I don't have a report.
Mr. Fenris?
I had a couple of things. Thank you, Richard. Getting back to what you just mentioned regarding the stop work order issued by Joe last week and the parking lot reconfiguration, what was the result of that? Was that?
So on Friday, the chair of the planning board and Bill Clark notified their council that they were going to approve this work, and notified the special services of that, and that they were going to, it actually, I think if town hall hadn't closed, it was just ironic, it closed at 1:30, they would have, probably could have worked on Saturday, but they were back in business on yesterday.
Oh, so we're in the clear.
We're in the concern,
Okay,
they're
all
back
right,
in
because
business.
I know that bubbled up, and then I meant to follow up, and I lost track of it, so I didn't know
Yeah.
where we were.
They're back in business yesterday.
All right, great. Any movement with Ken Quigley and Curry on the retreat, some
No,
dates?
so I didn't even, do we want to, I didn't ask yet, but do we
Okay.
have any dates that
I mean, I'm happy to push it off until our next meeting. I don't know if we want to go back and forth and try to
Why don't we
figure
do
that
this?
out now. There's a lot of value to it, so I'd like
agree.
to make sure we do it.
I'll email Jen tomorrow some dates, and then you guys can pick.
Okay.
Want to go with another Saturday, 9 to 1, is that all right?
Mhm.
I mean, that way it doesn't take a whole day, we can get it done.
Yeah.
I'll just make sure we're not there like on his homecoming day or the first football game, but that'll be okay. And I do want to welcome our newest member of the team, Jen McCullough, who will be taking Amy's position, so how was your first day? I mean, excuse me, Emily's, I'm
Emily.
sorry, oh my, listen, I'm tired, I'm so tired. I was just thinking about Tom, I was gonna ask Tom a question about the town account, Amy. We'll be taking Emily's position, oh, it's been a long day. Welcome. And Emily, thank you again for everything. You keep me grounded.
Two more things.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Coffee with a Cop, I'd like to
Yes.
pursue that with you, and maybe we can loop in our pal there, who just took the big job in the city, and try to pursue something with John King.
So I was gonna wait till we're off camera I just wanted to make sure Michael was back before we reached out to the commission.
Okay,
But we'll do
sure,
that.
okay.
I think we're gonna have to pick a place.
Okay,
I think we're gonna need some more rooms.
yeah.
Okay.
Question for our town administrator, you don't have to get in the weeds on this, but Yulin, status quo, kind of, any new developments since 11 o'clock this morning?
No
Okay,
developments.
okay.
Conversation between Commissioner Roy and myself, and a separate conversation between my Senator Timberley and myself. Hope to have everything resolved tomorrow morning.
Okay.
With the expectation to make sure that that rink is open early next week for all of our young skaters.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And one last thing, getting back to the, any potential committee that we form regarding Falcone, I would like to offer up my services and express my interest in being a part
Just
of it.
email me, yeah, just email me.
Okay, great.
Okay. Anything else? Future agenda, citizen speak response. And we will get that on the website, I promise. Future agenda items, anything? Katie, you're good at this. Anything you wanna?
No, I did think of something the other day, but I'm sorry, it escapes me right now. I'll
Write it
email
down.
it to
I've said,
Mike if
keep my
I
little
think of
notebook, I
anything.
write them down when I think of them. Okay. So given that,
I have a couple.
oh, go ahead, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had spoken about possibly having an animal control officer in here.
Yeah,
To talk about coyotes and what will become the season shortly.
okay.
You had mentioned Brian Walsh coming in from Fire
Yeah,
Building.
so it's, yeah,
Yep. Pulte had reached out today to the town planner about getting an easement, they're looking for a Verizon easement through the Governor Stoughton property. So they would have to do that as the trustees of the Governor Stoughton. And then MPEG, which we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Discussion and approval. And then I have Chair Asher from the Warrant Committee on 9/26, if that's the following meeting.
so MPEG, and we have town council here tonight, we're going to have to look at how we renew their contract, which is expiring the same day as Comcast contract, which is October 1st, correct? Am I right, Michael?
October 18th.
No, something October. But it's the end of a 10-year contract, and I was unaware, today was my first MPEG meeting, but somehow that slipped. But I would not want to leave that lingering out there, so I think when I have the opportunity, we can have a conversation with John Flynn, is just, and I emailed you the contract today, so you can have it
Correct,
for
yeah.
him, how we proceed with that. John was the counsel on that when it was signed by this board in 2008?
Eight.
2008, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that something that we could, I hate to volunteer anybody else since I'm not on the Comcast negotiating team and Mike is, but is that something we could ask the negotiating team to maybe take on as a project, since there is some connection between the two?
I'm hoping that it's much less than that this is something we do very quick. That's, you already
Seems
have,
to
you
me
have a
there's a
copy of it already?
there's probably a public hearing requirement, at least I think there was in the past, but.
So there was a lot of questions at today's MPEG meeting, especially with some of the veteran members who have a lot of institutional knowledge. Marlon Gordon, Dr. Giuliano, is trying to remember, because they're doing the same as some of the Comcast stuff, what was done. In reading what was provided for me today, I didn't find an RFP or anything. It's just a contract that was approved and signed by the board, and at the time it was John Michael Shields, Kathy Fagan, and Mary McGettrick.
4 years ago, we did a renewal, and we were not
Yes.
required to have a hearing, but we had one just so the public could give some input. But it wasn't required, but I don't know what happened in 2008.
So that renewal was within that contract. It was a 4-year extension of the 10-year contract. It followed the initial 6 years. So in this case here, I think we actually need to, from what and I'm sure you do contracts a lot more than I do, I think we need to renew it and have some type of process to do it, whatever. And I'd be guided by whatever we can find and whatever maybe John might be able to guide us as to how we do it. But I do think that I wouldn't want to leave this lingering out there. I think we want to move on this pretty quick. Anything else? You sure? Good? So then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And I'm going to call to order a meeting of the Governor Stoughton Fund. I'm going to go right to item number 2, which is an approval of the meetings. We have a motion before us to approve the meeting minutes for the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund from April 12th, 2017, April 11th, 2018, and July 23rd, 2018, as written.
I think there's just one correction on the April 11th, 2018 minutes. Under number 4, just at the end, it says that I moved and David Burns seconded. I think, since David was the chair, I think it was the opposite. I think David would have been the one who moved and I probably seconded it. I think if we just reverse the names.
Is that it?
Yes.
Good? Anything else? Are we doing that as a friendly, or do we have to vote that? Oh, yeah, so, okay. So, I'll take that as a friendly amendment, and then could someone make a motion second, and we can,
Did we make the motion?
I think we did that. We didn't make a motion yet, did we?
No, so yeah.
Yeah, so, I'll take that as a friendly amendment, as amended, and, I'd ask for a motion and a second on this.
So I'll move to approve the meeting minutes for the trustees of the Governor Stoughton Fund from April 12, 2017, April 11, 2018, as amended, and July 23, 2018. July 23, 2018, as written, and April 12, 2017, as written.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Item number 3 is discussion approval of the formation of a committee to discuss the remaining funds in the Governor Stoughton Trust. I don't know if I'd call it remaining, I think we're talking about existing funds, correct? In the Governor Stoughton Trust? Okay. I'll open this to, I've commented a lot on this in the past, so comments? Anyone first? So just approximately 5.4 million, 5.3 million in the fund now? So at least 5.3.
Yeah, there's a good bit of interest in there in the last couple of months, so maybe 5.6.
Okay, there we go.
So in talking with our assistant planner today, because we were both at the trustees of the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, and I know that they had an interest in looking to the Governor Stoughton Trust for funds. I guess I would like a little clarification on my role as a person who sits both on the Board of Selectmen and the Affordable Housing Trust, and perhaps our town council, John Flynn, is really the person to talk to about that. And the reason I'm mentioning it now is that I'm not sure who is being proposed to form or to be on the committee. I would assume there might be one of us, so I was just curious, did you have an idea about who you'd like to be on?
I did.
Okay.
That was my own, so just my own thought is to have you be the primary from us. And if the other members want to second it, but we've got so many committees now. My second thought is, and I've thought about this for a couple of weeks now, is to perhaps have a couple of former members of the board who were, because if you've never been a Governor Stoughton trustee, it's going to be hard to understand it. I thought of maybe appointing maybe a couple, because I see this as two, I see two, I see two roles here. A, the money part of it, and I just think we have so many things on our plate. I think that perhaps you could also look at those additional 4 acres and how we start to move forward as to what we're going to do with it. I really don't want to let this sit for 10 years and talk about this, and I don't think you do either. So that's just my own thought, and I just
need some clarification then, because if what's on the agenda is a formation of a committee to discuss the funds in the Governor Stoughton Trust.
Right.
So right now, the trust has the funds, but we also have the 4 acres.
Right.
So the 4 acres is, let's leave that aside for a minute. If we're just talking about the funds, that's not targeted at affordable housing, that's targeted at the poor.
Right.
So the question is, I mean, obviously, the 5 of us as trustees are going to have to be the ones, whoever the trustees are at any given time, it's going to be the 5 trustees that will have to make any decisions regarding expenditures. But we have talked about trying to get some advice, whether it's from the existing Abbey Capital that the treasurer uses to advise on the investment of the funds. We need investment and expenditure advice. And if we're going to form a committee,
So,
I'm not opposed to a committee, but I think the professional advice is probably more important for us to get at this point.
I agree, so that was the second part I was gonna say, was going to the email that you had mentioned. There was I think one financial entity reached out. I think that, so I have actually 2 thoughts. A, Melinda's having, overseeing the 4 acres part, and the second part, maybe having the finance committee, and if you think this is too much, tell me, begin the process of perhaps meeting in, or inviting in brokers to meet with us, to look at how we invest this. Because in the nutshell, it's very simple. On January 1st of 2020, so that people understand it, January 1st of 2019, the clock is going to start to tick on the $5.6 million that sits in there. If I'm correct, we have to give away 5% in 2019.
I don't think there's any requirement that we do that unless there's something in the general laws or something that, we've never had a 5% requirement. What the trustees have done in the past with a lot less money is just, it's really been ad hoc. If the food pantry or the Milton Residence Fund came in, or even the hospital for the free care, we've given a donation based on a specific need. In the Residence Fund, it's often been, sometimes it's been just for utility aid or heating, or sometimes it's been a specific case where someone needs help with a medical bill or a heating bill. So there hasn't been a percentage. It's really been up to the discretion of the trustees, but we now have a lot more money, so maybe we should be thinking along those lines. But I don't know of anything that requires us to spend 5%.
I think we're a nonprofit, correct? Is the Governor Stoughton a nonprofit under 501c3?
No.
No, so it's not, okay,
No.
so, okay, maybe not, okay, so then, I thought we were.
Yeah.
So then if that's the case, then the 5% window doesn't, am I right, John? That window doesn't exist, unlike, there's no requirement for the 5% annually. Go ahead, I can hear you. Well, I can hear the question coming, go ahead.
Well, I am wondering if one of the questions this committee might help advise the board on is a workable definition for the current age of poor. Because I think there's, I just think that we need to know what we're working with, because we say affordable housing doesn't intersect with, well, I guess what we would say now is, people who are economically disadvantaged. But I guess I need some data on that, and I'd like to understand maybe from the AG's office, and maybe John Flynn could also help us figure that out. And I think not just for this board, but going forward, because when this bequest was made, who could envision what life would be like today? And
Right.
so, and in Milton, what qualifies as poor could be different than it might be somewhere else. So I know I would benefit from a little clarity there. I don't know what other people are thinking, though. Other people may have a clearer idea than I do.
So this is where I think I'm right, John, in that the word poor is the word that the AG makes note of, and that is outlined in the will, the benefit of the poor.
Right.
I think, to Melinda's comment, perhaps the AG is the first stop. That we give them some proposals, like, would this be acceptable, would this be acceptable, would this be acceptable? At the same time, though, to your point, I think we need to bring in, or seek proposals. I'm not sure how we do it, as to how we invest this money the wisest.
Yeah. Right, and make use of it as well.
Right,
But
right.
I'm not advocating for one thing or another. I just would like to know, I would like to have a working definition and some criteria for what we feel is an appropriate and effective use of the funds.
Can I give a little bit of history here? Well,
Yeah.
actually, Mike goes ahead of me.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, Katie.
Just in terms of the poor, I think this issue of what is the poor has come up in the context of
Right.
affordable housing. Affordable housing is just one issue. Most, in my 5 years on this board, and Tom's here, you could speak to this too, what we've really been spending these funds on has been Milton Residence
Right.
Fund, the
Right.
food pantry, issues like that, where there really hasn't been a question of, is the recipient poor or not? We haven't had to get legal opinions on that. It's really been a judgment call, and it's been pretty clear-cut. It's become an issue because the Affordable Housing Trustees asked for $2.5 million for the Affordable Housing Trust, and that, a huge request like that, in a specific request, we'd have to get some legal guidance on that. But I think in terms of what we've spent it on traditionally, there really hasn't been a legal issue of, does this person meet the criteria? My suggestion would be we at least think about starting with the company that the treasurer already uses, Abbey Capital, to invest this, and possibly hear from that investment advisor as to what they recommend. And then we may want to consider, do we want to look at other options or not? But we have to think about investing this, as well as should we come up with a range that we should be spending every year. We've already committed $60,000 to the Milton Residence Fund to help with the cost of the social worker. So that's a big increase from what we've put forward in the past. I think we have to consider the Affordable Housing Trust issue on its own. And I know that we're talking about forming a committee, but I think all 5 trustees really need the guidance from the investment advisor, not a committee or even the finance committee. I think it should be to all 5 of us.
So I'm gonna ask for two things. A, I agree with you, because you're right in that my understanding has always been, when I thought it was a 501. But absent that, the one thing about the Milton Residence Fund, it clearly, especially in the AG's eyes, mirrors the poor of Milton. I mean, I don't think there's anything in this town that does more for the poor than that does. So it's always it's a no-brainer, actually, to make those grants and those awards. To Melinda's point, I think we need to have a meeting and have that discussion with public charities and the AGs and find out what else would they feel meets the criteria of the poor. Melinda's correct in that the poor in Milton is a lot different in 2018 than it was in 17, whenever that was written. I mean, I've read it so many times. Just when you read the way the English grammar, the way it's, wouldn't even talk like that anymore. The way that it's, and I think town council will agree, as he saw that as took place in the whole process that got to where it is with Pulte today, that anything outside of what we're currently doing, which is Milton Residence Fund, I think the AG is going to have to approve it. Am I right, John?
Yes.
Is-
And on the court.
Oh, the probate court, right, one or the other.
Okay.
One or the other. Go ahead.
For the 4 acres, though, just clarify that, you're not talking about expenditures from the fund, you're talking
I'm
about
not spending the money too, because how, like, I think that,
No,
No?
but if somebody else, I don't either, if somebody else comes in and, whether it's the food bank, the food pantry or
No,
something.
no, I
Outside the
get
Milton
that, no,
Residence
no.
Fund,
No, I
think
get
that's,
that, no.
we don't need guidance on that.
I don't mean the 4 acres, I mean, if someone comes before and says, okay, I want to build X amount of affordable units, and I want to apply to take some of your money to buy down some of those affordable units.
Yeah, that clearly would be
I
a
don't think
question
we
for
could
the
make
AGA,
that
I
decision
think.
on our own.
No.
Could you, am I right, John? I don't think we could.
No, I agree with that, I thought.
And
you were
granted,
talking
that,
about
they could make
requests
that
from the
argument
fund.
that it's gonna help the poor, but I'm not so sure the AG's gonna just say, okay, go ahead and do that. You get where I'm going with
Yeah,
that?
so.
But I agree with you on the other thing, right, if it's
Yeah.
Milton Food Bank, I agree, go
Yeah.
ahead, sorry.
No. So I think we're talking about two things. One is investment, one is
Yep,
distribution.
I agree.
So in investment, I think we have a clear path. We start with the treasurer's office, and then there may be other vendors, if you will, that we want to look at in terms of investment. And in terms of distribution, we could try, it seems to me, to get some fences or some parameters from the AG's office. But at the end of the day, I think, Richard, you're right, that if it's a close call, then we're going to be going for the AG for a sign-off.
Right.
In other words, we're going to be going on the back end, not necessarily. I don't know that you're going to get much on the front end because
Right.
it's just speculative.
Hypothetical.
And yeah, and so I think the process is probably going to be on the distribution side. What do we think fits within the definition of the poor? And if it clearly fits in our eyes, and we as the trustees are not concerned that it doesn't fit within, legally doesn't fit within that definition, then we go forward. If we think it's a close call, then we go to the AG's office or the probate court.
I agree. And going back to what you said, I agree, like food bank, any of those, all those that, my concern was like, if you recall, prior to this board, was David, you and I think right after we got it, I think within a week, we got a request for 2.5 million, 1.5 million,
Right.
you know, and I don't think we could have just done that. I don't think we could have done that. Okay. So, can I ask this? Would you be comfortable just within your finance committee of having, at one of your meetings, bringing in the treasurer and Abby and just having that discussion with them, or would you not? Or do you want me to go in a different direction? I'm just thinking, because you have this finance subcommittee,
Well,
you want to think of?
I don't know if, we should still have to approve the charge of the finance committee, but I don't think it was contemplated by the draft charge. And
Okay,
I
all
think
right,
that it's
okay.
something that all 5 trustees really need to
I
hear
mean, just to
the
get it
advice
started,
from.
right, I agree. I'm just thinking, just to like, kind of, is this something, do you think we should bring them into a public meeting with all of us and talk to them? I don't know.
I think we'd have to, yeah.
All right, let's schedule it. Let's schedule it. You okay with that? You okay with that?
Yeah, I
right,
think
let's
that's
schedule
the way to go.
And then the second thing, going to what Michael said, maybe for all of them, even for Milton resident, that we have like a window every year, like if you're going to apply, if you are, like, the entities that we think already meet the threshold, that in X window each year, you could apply. And in that time frame, we review whatever comes in, and then we make the award. That way, we're not just, that way, we're kind of, it's similar to a role that I have in another hat, where we do a lot of this, that you've got this window, they're coming in, you know what they are, you can discuss them, and then you can do it. Instead of like, oh, so-and-so calls up, hey, can I come on the agenda in 2 weeks, I just think that would be, let's give some structure to it.
And I think Katie also mentioned making that determination about how much,
Right.
so that, are we going to maintain the corpus? Are we going, so how, if we're going to do that, then what's prudent to distribute every year? Or what
You're
else
right.
will we be doing with it? I don't know.
Going to Mr. Hurley's proposal, you could have two paths. You could have your operational request, which you could X amount, so much money operation, which you could easily meet each year. and then maybe every so many years, for something that would meet a capital, like, every so many years, you could perhaps give 100,000 for something, or 150 for something. Go ahead, Tom,
If you don't mind.
go ahead, come up.
I think you got a bunch of issues here. You have a bunch of issues here. First of all, I think you've hit on a lot of them. Investing-wise,
Right,
prudent investor rules. That's what you're bound by. You're a trust. You're bound by prudent investor rules.
right,
Codified in federal law and incorporated into state law. Definitionally, there's poor, in the original will, it's the poor, but not only the poor of Milton. Nobody's really been able to
Right.
figure out, what either one of those necessarily are. You can certainly say that, well, if you're 60% of area median income, that's what the federal government says poor is.
Right.
So, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to say that that's not poor. 80%, I'm not sure. I mean, it gets definitional. And what does the of Milton part mean?
right.
The other issue you have is the way the will was set up was in perpetuity, I believe.
Right.
The land was supposed to be used forever for the poor. So does that mean that the fund has to
Right.
last? In other words, is it an endowment fund?
Exactly, that's what I'm, yeah.
And if it is an endowment fund, then it only spends its earnings. But you have to be careful, on the other hand, the way the trustees got in trouble before was we were not doing enough.
Anything, right, enough, right.
So do you have to spend all your earnings, on annually?
Right.
So those are the issues I think you have to think about. And then you've also got the 4 acres of land, which is another issue that you have to hash out. So there's a bunch of moving parts. Don't have all the answers, but I don't think the AG is necessarily going to give you guidance.
Yeah.
They'll be the first ones there to say you're wrong.
Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that just. my
And
two
I don't
cents.
think, I don't think any of us want to be in that, like, well, here's what we did, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Just-
Right. On the other hand, though, if you've got if you've thought it out well and you define it well,
Right.
then they're only second guessed.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
Great.
thank you,
Thank you.
okay. So, we'll schedule Abbey Capital. I still think, though, that, at least from my knowledge, at least in my world of trusteeing, we've looked at multiple, you look at multiple, like Tom says, I don't think we should just put all our eggs in one basket and hear one proposal. I think we're gonna wanna, our obligation is to the poor and to invest this money the best that we can. So I think we're gonna have to be diligent on that. The second part, going back to the 4 acres, I would like to see us start to move forward on having a discussion as to what can be done with it, how we're gonna do with it, and my thought outside, if we're gonna look for anyone outside of this, I don't need any answers today, this is my own thought. If we're gonna look outside of this board, my first thought is to look at, as the gentleman who just left the table, former members of this board who've been there and understand this, because as you just said in your previous discussion about trying to make this understood, the Hurley Amendment, I think the people who, it's a very small entity who truly understand what the government fund is, are the former members, existing and former members of this board. So that's just my own thought, and I'll put this on again for next, I want to put this on again.
Oh, we have that next in executive session?
Oh, yeah, an executive session as well, so, okay. Anything else before I move to go into executive session? Okay. So I'm going to go to item number 4, which is executive session, which is the approval of minutes strategy with respect to real property, town farm remaining 4 acres, J. Thomas Shirley and John Flynn, and for the purpose of approving the executive session meeting minutes to discuss strategy with respect to these such discussions, excuse me. The second one, oh yeah. So here I go, now I'm gonna do it as a motion. I'll finish that one. She wrote me a side note that I didn't know I was getting, yeah. So I'm gonna start that again. So the motion is gonna be to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing strategy with respect to the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, the town farm remaining 4 acres, believing that having such discussions in open session would have a detrimental effect to the negotiating and litigating purchases, position of the trustees, and for the purpose of approving executive session minutes, and to discuss strategy with, and only to return to open session to adjourn. Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Zulus?
Yes.
Mr. Wells, yes. Mrs. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Farrington, yes. We are in executive session.